Syria. Don't believe all the media hysteria. They say the whole country is against the side. What about every single pro-government march? What about the character of the opposition? What kind of government do they really envision? It's like Libya 2.0 if you ask me. The CIA is now just sitting and laughing. They take popular discontent and spin it. Want to see the Arab revolution diminished? What about Palestine support from Damascus? Will that still remain if the country is captured? Clear that the Zionists support the rebels. Want to see the Baptist state just leveled? Who really benefits is the question to ask. We should know much better from the most recent past.
Yeah, we'd like to welcome Johnny Achi from Arab American for Syria. Welcome, Brother Johnny.
Hello, Dedon. Thanks for having me on the show again.
From the source. Yeah. But it shocked me because when you talked about delivery system, that could be a mortar, that could be anything. I mean, a delivery system to take, a couple ounces of gas and deliver it could be anything, which in essence, as I read it, could mean the total disarmament of the Syrian military. And that was my concern.
Yes,
in theory.
Of course. Yes. I mean, this is what's happening right now. Is that the Syrian government is responding extremely well to the United Nations groups on the ground, and they've done what they did. They dismantled pretty much every single part that is under the Syrian government control. There's only 2 locations that are under rebel control. I'm not saying these facilities under the control. They don't know what it is actually, but it's in areas which are under the control. My concern is not about the Syrian armament, the chemical weapons, but about the chemical weapon that exists with the rebels or those armies.
That was my second question. Is there any discussion about the disarmament of the rebels, gas, stockpiles?
Yeah. No one is talking about Dedon because no one is can talk on behalf of these groups. All these terrorist groups, no one really speaks with. They just send them money, they send them the Mujahideen into Syria, but no one has control over them. And we do want to talk about the coalition that supposedly represents these people on the ground. These coalitions, we're going to Geneva II. Part of that deal, that the chemical disarmament, is to go to Geneva II and speak with the coalition or the oppositions inside the country that the West had put a veto on. There's 2 kinds of opposition, of course. The one, the expatriates, the United States and the West want to have the only sole representative of the Syrian people. And we have what you've been hearing me say on your show many, many times, the true national opposition inside of Syria that no one talks about. These people, since 2.5 years ago, since the Syrian government, part of the reform program, had allowed a multi-party system rule and passed the law, we have a lot of older parties who have been in business or in politics even prior to the Ba'ath movement have re-emerged. And these are national people. There's a new groups who have over 11 new parties who have also surfaced as people with national agenda. They have a national mission statement. Some of what they say is, of course, vetoed by the United States and the West because they don't represent their interests in the region. And why should they? I mean, some of the basic common beliefs is to say we're against all foreign intervention. We're against the U.S. or NATO strike on Syria, against the militarizing of the conflict. And you might tell me, well, those are noble ideas. Why would the expatriates or the outside oppositions, they have problems with that? Yes, they do have problems with that. They did call for U.S. strike on Syria, and before it for NATO strike to mirror the Libyan scenario. They did call for militarizing. They're still asking for the arming of the terrorist groups in Syria. They did call for intervention. They do represent these countries. I mean, basically you have 10 or 11 countries who make up what they call Friends of Syria, who are calling for democratic transition in Damascus, and they're calling for President Bashar al-Assad to not have any role in future Syria. Well, it's odd that a democracy promoting coalition would dictate to Syrian who it is or is not to be the president in the future. Equally strange is that half of that coalition of these countries are not themselves democratic. I mean, when you look at the monarchies and Emirates like Jordan and Qatar and Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, okay, and the other half, which is the United States, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, and Turkey, are only promoting democracy in Syria, but not in these countries, that they're allied with. basically we're going to a new phase, Dedon. Geneva II is actually taking place right now as we speak. A lot of people say, well, it's not till maybe 2 or 3 weeks. No, it's happening. Since the agreement with the Syrian government about disarming its nuclear chemical weapons, that means we have agreed to go to Geneva II with the Syrian condition, which means no dialogue with the terrorists. We have plenty of opposition inside of Syria, and this is today, for the first time, the European Union is meeting some of these folks. So we are going to Geneva with the true opposition, not because the United States likes it, but they were left with no other option. We need to isolate the terrorists on the ground. We need to isolate Saudi Arabia because they are the only one left who is still sending weapons and arms to these terrorist groups in Syria before we turn Syria into a Balkan swamp, which, eventually is going to come and hit everyone else involved in the conflict.
You make a very interesting point that if Bashar al-Assad is so hated by the masses of people in Syria, why are they fearful of him running for office in competition with the other representatives of the Friends of Syria or other political parties that exist in Syria today? I find that quite interesting because democracy means democracy, not limited democracy or what's dictating who the new president is going to be of Syria.
It's so true. With just 1 minute, let me explain. Syria, yes, has hardly conformed to the Western model of multi-party democracy, okay? It's not at all, however, the undemocratic dictatorship it has been made out to be. Okay, it's not, for example, Saudi Arabia. Okay, Syria has a parliament. It had a parliament since 1946. Okay, Syria is independent. It's anti-colonial and anti-imperialist. And Syria, to the annoyance of the United States State Department, okay, remain committed to socialist goals. And we have presidential elections scheduled for 2014. Any Syrian, as long as he or she meets certain criteria, is free to run. Don't want Bashar al-Assad, they'll be free to toss him out then. Okay, on the other hand, however, this coalition made up from 10 countries who consider to be friends of Syria, okay, we tell them go towards Saudi Arabia, which is a family business. The Saudi family calls the shots. And there's no change, they'll be tossed out like President Bashar al-Assad, because there is no elections. They'll never have any elections in Saudi Arabia. So if Washington's were truly interested, okay, in democratic transition and undemocratic countries, it would have already long time ago put together Friends of the Saudi People group, not the Friends of Syria.
Let me ask you this. In terms of the New York Times today had an article about Turkey and Iran now are meeting. The foreign minister just went into Turkey and are negotiating the question of Syria. How do you make of this pronunciation?
It's excellent point, and this is where it should lead to. A lot of people make Iran to be the axis of evil, or Syria. These countries have remained anti-terrorism. The countries that support terrorism in the region are not Iran and Syria. They've never intervened in someone else's business. They're trying to build their own country independently, and that's their crime. Obviously, Turkey realizes now. It's trying to pull out. Turkey is trying to pull out of Turkey. It realized it went too far. It put all their cards, they played all their cards, they've lost their hand. It's time to turn around and see who is the bigger player in the region and try and remake friends. Turkey cannot survive with strong Syria and strong Iran and them being its enemy. So yes, Turkey is starting to, not because they want to, again, they would rather see a Muslim Brotherhood regime in Syria like they are in Turkey, but when all else has failed, you're forced with the second best option. The second best option is a strong Iran, strong Syria might be better for the region rather than an terrorist-infested Syria where it's going to affect all its neighbors. So yes, the United States is going along today with that option, and they're starting to open the negotiation with Iran indirectly or directly right now actually, and that's what's upsetting the Saudis, because any new influence to Iran in the region means it's going to be deducted from the Saudi. Saudi is trying to say we're not going to Geneva II because of course they have the strength on that coalition to say don't go to Geneva II. They're trying to force the United States into saying we are a major player in the region. You want to talk to Iran, you got to consider us. We have interest here. So we're going to continue to support terrorism in Syria, okay, until you realize that we need to be part of the solution. So again, the United States is going along with that. It's going to sideline Saudi Arabia. We're hoping that's what it's going to do. And again, not because it likes it, because all else has failed, and now left with only that other option.
Well, we got to move on, but we thank you, Brother Johnny Achi from Arab Americans for Syria, and we will continue to provide another point of view on the crisis in Syria, which is a direct implication for the economic survival or development of the United States, given the crisis that wars have on terms of domestic survival. We thank you, Brother Johnny.
Thanks so much, Dedon.
Take care.
your hands off of Syria. Don't believe all the media hysteria. They say the whole country is against the side. What about every single pro-government march? What about the character of the opposition? What kind of government do they really envision? It's like Libya 2.0 if you ask me. The CIA is now just sitting and laughing. They take popular discontent and spin it. Want to see the Arab revolution diminished? What about Palestine support from Damascus? Will that still remain if the country is captured? Clear that the Zionists support the rebels. Want to see the Baptist state just leveled? Who really benefits is the question to ask. We should know much better from the most recent past.